In 1915, a controversial film was released introducing Hollywood, the first glimpse of the civil rights movement, and the debate over freedom of expression. Tensions rose, leaving no man, woman, or child left untouched by the film's widespread impact. W. Griffith's film, The Birth of a Nation, released in 1915, explored how far a film could take freedom of expression. The film encountered backlash regarding race and re-exchanged past values to resurrect the Ku Klux Klan. During the early 1800s, civil war broke out between the North and the South in the United States. After several bloody battles, the North claimed victory over the South. This meant that the United States would remain one country and slavery would be abolished. The war left the country broken, so the federal government took charge over re-establishing the country as a united nation and henceforth ushered in the Reconstruction era. Reconstruction consisted of both physical and political rebuilding. Railroads and buildings were repaired. New policies such as requiring Southern voters to pledge their allegiance to the Union and allowing newly freed slaves a representative voice in government were instituted. Some whites were taken aback at the African Americans' newly established rights and were determined to restore white supremacy throughout the nation. This mindset is what brought about organizations such as the Ku Klux Klan, also known as the KKK. Membership of the KKK quickly expanded, recruiting mostly former Civil War Confederate soldiers. Before long, the organization had spread throughout the South. Pushing to restore white supremacy, blacks were the obvious target of the Klan's terrorism. But teachers in the North, judges, and carpetbaggers were also affected by the violence. By 1869, just 4 years after the end of the war, the Klansmen, as they became to be known, began to turn against themselves in fear that their leaders were becoming corrupt. The increased violence made those more moderate citizens drop out and criminals filled their places. This eventually led to the near extinction of the KKK. 50 years after the American Civil War, citizens of the country were still reeling from its effects. During this time, one man was presented the opportunity to explore the limits of art, race, and the freedom of expression. Inspired by the book The Klansman and his own father's Civil War experience, filmmaker D.W. Griffith created one of the most controversial films of all time. Griffith began his career in 1908 when he started acting and directing many short films for the New York companies Edison and Biograph. He was known for his innovative filming techniques, and in 1914, Griffith became head director of Reliance Majestic. It was under this company that Griffith independently directed his first major noteworthy movie. Titled The Klansman and later renamed for its world premiere The Birth of a Nation, was considered so epic it became known as the first blockbuster film and led to the creation of Hollywood. The Birth of a Nation premiered in New York on March 3, 1915. The movie portrayed the Civil War and the following Reconstruction period. It glamorized and romanticized the war and the KKK, inaccurately portraying the events of Reconstruction. It also dehumanized blacks, making them appear animal-like and violent. All major black parts were done by white actors in blackface. Although the movie was controversial, it explored filming techniques that had not been seen before and operated on a budget that had not previously been done. Blair, professor of journalism at Boston University and author of a book titled The Birth of a Nation, further explains these filming techniques.
Along came, Griffith with The Birth of a Nation, and it was a 3-hour epic film about the biggest story in their lifetime, the Civil War and Reconstruction. And not only that, he did things that had never been done or seen on screen, reenacting Civil War battles, telling the story of these two families, one from the North, one from the South. It was really kind of dramatic. He brought to bear all these innovative film techniques that we take for granted today, like the close-up, shooting a scene from multiple angles and then cutting it to heighten the suspense, and the drama.
New levels of creativity with costumes, music, and set design originated with this film. Because of these exciting new techniques, people were ecstatic about the new art form that had been created and glorified the film. President Woodrow Wilson even said in a White House press release, "It was like writing history with lightning." Although the film was widely praised, it encountered backlash. African Americans and their sympathizers were appalled at the film's portrayal of them. Protests broke out, calling for a ban of the film from theaters. One of the most prominent leaders of these protests was William Monroe Trotter. Trotter founded The Guardian, a black Boston newspaper, to help stop racist propaganda. Trotter participated in the startup conference of the NAACP in 1909, but chose not to join the organization because whites held many high-ranking positions. On April 10, 1915, Trotter and 2,000 of his followers marched to the house of the Massachusetts governor David Walsh to try and convince him to prosecute the theaters who showed the film. Instead, Walsh passed a new censorship bill which led to a judge looking over the movie to see if it violated anything. The judge ruled that only one scene violated the law. Griffith was forced to remove the certain scene, but the movie continued to play in theaters around the nation. Unhappy by the results, Trotter and his followers pursued yet another censorship law in the state of Massachusetts. Trotter testified in court and succeeded in convincing Walsh to sign into law the new censorship guidelines, which established a 3-man censorship board that had the power to revoke theater licenses if a movie was shown that was previously deemed inappropriate. Together, Trotter and the NAACP crusaded against the film, giving the NAACP its first real cause. They petitioned for The Birth of a Nation to be reviewed by the new movie censorship board in Massachusetts. Does a film have the right to be racist? Or is it more important to censor racism? Ultimately, the board declined to ban the movie, going against many opposers. The movie had already been denied release in multiple cities such as Chicago, Denver, Minneapolis, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, and the entire state of Kansas. The movie ended up becoming most popular in Boston, contradicting Trotter's goals for the film. The white newspapers only generated more interest in the film when they covered the African Americans protesting against it. Despite the NAACP's struggle to censor Birth of a Nation, it ignited a conversation regarding a film's freedom of expression. As a result, states were left to determine for themselves if and how they wanted to censor films. In 1922, at the height of the film's popularity, the Motion Picture Association of America, MPAA, was created. What started out as a self-censorship system led to the film rating system we know today. As acknowledged by the MPAA, this system endures as a symbol of American freedom of expression today. According to our interview with Lair, the film's popularity among the citizens of the country was widely due to the lingering anger from the Civil War. Because of this anger, the imagery on the screen, and the positive reviews the KKK was receiving, the idea to start a new Klan was sparked by William Joseph Simmons in 1915. In an interview with Klan historian John Kneebone, further explanations were given.
When he dreamed up the second Ku Klux Klan, the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan Incorporated. And that was, at least in Simmons' mind, was going to be a fraternal order, something like the Masons or the Woodmen of the World or the Oddfellows, that would be engaged in maybe civic good deeds, but mostly meeting for fellowship and socializing.
Simmons took advantage of the popular film The Birth of a Nation and used it as a recruiting tool in propaganda. Simmons recognized that the message the film portrayed matched the mindset of the white public at the time and knew it would help his newfound Klan take off. Due to the romantic portrayal of the KKK in The Birth of a Nation, Klan membership rose and peaked in 1924 with an estimated 4 to 5 million members. Directly correlated, violent acts by KKK members also rose as membership increased. This is because the film portrays lynchings as a positive act, which explains the continuations of lynchings of African Americans in the years to come. Years later, Lear infiltrated the KKK for a story, and the movie was still being used. The leader at the time, David Duke, was trying to recruit new members. Lear commented that Duke was providing racist commentary as the film was shown to encourage new members. As the film passed its 100-year anniversary, The Birth of a Nation is still receiving attention for its controversial ideas and cinematic success. The film was re-released and books commemorated 100 years of conversation of race, expression, and art. Beyond the commemoration, there were dozens of articles discussing its influence 100 years later, using phrases like "still great," "still shameful." The worst thing about A Birth of a Nation is how great it is. An epic film, embedded bigotry, presents the complex, contradicting impact this film has had in America. It coincides with the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, the removal of the Confederate flag and icons of the Confederacy from the South, and the continued racial tensions throughout the nation. In January of 2016, at the Independent Film Festival Sundance, Birth of a Nation premiered yet again. This time, however, it featured the story of Nat Turner. The title isn't the only thing the Birth of a Nation films share. It further promotes a conversation of race and expression in this country. The film's director Nate Parker remarked, "I think that until we're able to look D.W. Griffith in the eye and his racist propaganda film that set the tone and pace for American cinema and American thought, until we're willing to challenge that foundation that we stand on, we're going to have problems for generations to come. Some of these problems including the recent controversy over the 2016 Oscars, an event that saw no black acting nominees." Though the NAACP lost their fight to censor The Birth of a Nation, it cemented the foundation of their Organization for Civil Rights. Despite its usefulness as a propaganda tool, the KKK today is an underground organization that holds little power. Is the film too critical for cultural analysis not to be shown? Or is it a dark part of history that needs to be censored from the eyes of the public? Perhaps this is one of those arguments that will never be resolved.